Hey, good morning. Welcome back to the channel. Today is Thursday, August 24th, 2023. And I have an embarrassing admission to make. When I was hanging up these bottom skins yesterday, two things. One is I noticed some faint blue lines that I had drawn here on both of them. And I also noticed that they weren't particularly challenging to put on. Now I knew because of these blue lines that these had been hung before, because you need to draw these intersecting lines that you will then trace onto the leading edges to get the point for the hole for the tie down. Anyways, different topic. These have been on before, but what I didn't really know or didn't think was that they had been final size drilled. This morning I was reviewing the plans from the very beginning of the wing section to make sure that I'm kind of on track and not forgetting anything, and decided to look back at some of my old videos just to check. And sure enough, on May 27th, I did actually fit and final size drill all of these skins, which is awesome. It's embarrassing that I hung them back up and I made this big deal thinking that I had to redo them. With the naked eye, you can't really tell if they've been final size drilled or not. Well, they have, which means I get to take these down and get into the countersinking business without spending a few hours going and moving a bunch of clecos, which is awesome. I'm stoked. Coincidentally, yesterday I said that it was August 23rd, the 32nd anniversary of the day that I became a Marine. In other words, the day that I graduated boot camp. May 27th, the day that I hung these up, was the 32nd anniversary of the day that I got to boot camp and I stood on the yellow footprints. So that's kind of weird. Anyways, so that's what's going to happen. I'm just going to take these skins off, set them on the shelf, and then go ahead and finish the last bit of countersinking on these main spars, and all the countersinks will be done, and then we can get into really assembling these wings and taking them off of the stands. I'm not going to say anything silly like I've said before, like by the end of next week. But I will say sometime in the future, these things will be riveted on and they will come off the stands, and I will get all of this space back, and the wings will live in a cradle that can roll around on the floor. I'm very excited about this. So thanks for being here. Sorry for taking you through all of this explanation about how I had to final size drill and fit these bottom skins when in fact I'd done it 3 months ago. Let's build an airplane.
Okay, episode 97 is underway. It was a 5-hour workday. I think the cameras ran for 4 hours and 45 minutes before they overheated, and that was that. I said before that from now on, even on longer videos, I'm only going to speed things up by a maximum of 20 times, which means that I have more time to talk today because this is a longer day sped up by blah, blah, blah. First thing, obviously, as we talked about dropping these skins, they've already been final size drilled, which is awesome. And it only, I think it maybe cost me 15 minutes to, okay, look right here, I'm taking a picture. This is what we're going to talk about. The so-called scarf joint. In the plans, Vance describes it as a scarf joint when they're talking about preparing the main skins and fastening them. On both of the wings, on the top and the bottom, the outboard skin overlaps the inboard skin, the main skins. Outboard overlaps the inboard by about maybe 1.5 inches or 2 inches. Those skins are 25 thousandths thick. The fuel tank skin is 32 thousandths thick. So when those two skins are overlapped, they're 50 thousandths, and so they are 12 thousandths thicker, or rather maybe 18 thousandths thicker than the fuel tank skin where they meet, on the spar. So here are a couple of different views of what it is you're trying to accomplish. You need to thin just on the corner, not the full length of that overlap of the skins, but just on the corner, starting from a point about 3 to 4 inches out on both the lateral and the vertical, or the fore and aft. Start thinning it down so that where they do meet the tank skin at that seam right there, it's a smooth transition. It's not critical. It's not going to change how the way that the plane flies necessarily. It's really cosmetic. But with these Vans aircraft, of course, what we're trying to do is make them smooth and fast. And so all of these tiny things, an accumulation of all these tiny things can add up to a big performance gain. So that's why we use all these flush rivets and countersink and dimple, everything like that. But otherwise, it would just be visually a wonky transition between the tank skin and where the two skins overlap. So that's the scarf joint that I was describing before. When we actually get to doing that, then I'll probably shoot a little bit more close up on the process that I use to create that scarf joint. I just like to say scarf joint. So yeah, prepping the main skins, which will be happening in earnest here in the next couple of days, is a bit more than just deburring, edge finishing, that kind of business. We have to think about that joint. The bottom skins all have places where access or inspection plates will be mounted, which means that they need to have nut plates attached and all of that. Of course, they all have to be dimpled, thousands of dimples done. So prepping the main skins probably won't be a one-day job, but that's what we have to look forward to. On this day, what I'm doing here is the final 202 countersinks. So once this process that I'm going through right here is complete, that means that all of the countersinks in the main spar are done. There are actually 2 holes, that I left not countersunk. On the top side of the wing, if you look to the very far end and you can see where the wing walk is, there are 4 ribs for the wing walk. On the top side of the wing, the fuel tank skin only covers 3 of those. The wing walk covers 3 of those ribs. The 4th, the most inboard rib, is not covered by a skin. That's where there's a fuselage attach happening right there. So I haven't touched that one single hole that will be part of that fuselage attached business. But anyways, for all intents and purposes, I've said 1,120, but as many times as I've tried to count, and I'm sure I'm off by a few. Anyways, let's say more than 1,100 countersinks are complete. And then at the end of this video, once I finish up all of these countersinks, basically you might notice a time change here. I'll get through the right wing, which you see me finishing right here. When that's done, I'll go inside, take a lunch break, stop the camera and whatnot. And then at the end, what we'll get into is handling the, just because it's something that needs to be done, not right now, but needs to be done. Those random 7 rivets, really 14 per wing, that sit at the forwardmost rivet hole on each of those main ribs that are where the fuel tanks go. So the ones that just sort of randomly sit in between those nut plates for the screws, I went ahead and at the end of this day went ahead and just riveted all of those. Remember, those are flush rivets. Okay, let me show you what's going on right here. Yesterday, you might have seen me fidgeting with the center support on both of these wings because it gets a little bit wonky when you are putting clecos on the bottom row, along the bottom, or rather the rear spar. And so I wanted to readjust them. And so what I was doing there, and here's a picture of how it turns out, I do the thing where you put a cleco at each end of the spar and then run a long piece of twine in between so you can check that there's not any sag in the spar as it's suspended between the two. I do have a center support, but you want the center support to be the right height. And so I use, as you can see right here, I made the center support maybe a quarter, maybe a half inch shy of what it should be, so that I could use these shims to fine tune the height of the center support so that the whole length of the spar would be completely flat. And so you get that, what I showed you a minute ago, where the string runs along the same location along every rivet hole along the way. I needed to readjust it from where it was because it got fudged up a little bit yesterday, and it wasn't critical because I wasn't match drilling anything, but soon I will be putting the leading edges on the top of the wing and riveting. And by the top, I mean as it's oriented right now. I'll be mounting the leading edges and riveting them on. And so it's important that the spar is completely true when I start riveting the leading edge skins to the main spar flange. So I did that. It seems like kind of random because right in the middle of countersinking, I stopped to do it. But I just noticed as I was moving something around that I didn't like the way that it felt and decided to move where that center support was, recheck the oh, look at that, tripped a breaker. Good grief. And went and reset it, and then it tripped again. So I stayed outside for a couple of minutes to water a struggling section of my lawn. And when I came back in, I was like, well, what the hell? That that breaker tripped immediately again after I reset it. I do need to get an upgrade on the electrical in my garage at 15 amp. Fuse doesn't cut it, and to be honest, not everything in here is running on that. The AC, I actually have running an extension cord into my laundry room that has like a 20 or 25 amp fuse for the so-called laundry room freezer, I think is what it's called on the breaker box. But between the TV, all the lights, and the compressor and the fan, that caused it to kick off, I think, when the compressor surged. And by all the lights, I mean the new ones that I added, the lights that are hanging. The ones that are in the ceiling, the original lights, those are on a different circuit. So it's not like everything in this garage is running on that one 15 amp breaker, but yeah, it becomes pretty frustrating. But I am glad that those main lights are not on that breaker, because when the breaker trips, I'm not left in the dark. Anyways. Where was I? Okay, yes. So readjusting just to make sure that those spars don't have any sag in them when I start riveting the skins on. That's a big deal. So I did the left wing on the right of your screen. I know it's confusing. I did the left wing, and then once I finish up these last couple of countersinks, then I think that I'll do the same thing to the other wing. Get that situated in a way that makes me happy, so that we can confidently carry on with the rest of the business of fixing the main skins. The main skins won't go on next. The next thing that will happen will be mounting the leading edges, which are already assembled and ready to go. So once all of this business is done today, I think, I'll double check and make sure that I'm not missing anything, but I think that tomorrow the business at hand will be to throw those leading edges back on the wings and finally rivet them on, which will definitely present a challenge. You can see kind of in the neighborhood where I'm standing right now, this end of the spar towards us is where the leading edges mount. You can see the main ribs where they come up, and if you look at the face, the web of the spar, you can see where the main ribs are riveted in, and then you can see an adjacent row of rivet holes. That's where the leading edge ribs the rib flange, the aft flange will mount there. Well, once you put that leading edge over the top, you need to find a way to get your hand in there to reach all of those middle rib flanges to rivet them on. And then you need an arm long enough on the other side that you can still operate a rivet gun with a double offset to, to pound those pretty heavy 1/8" universal head rivets. So that's going to be a challenge. You see that the web of the main spar has these lightning holes. The 3 smaller ones, I already kind of checked, and if I take my watch off, I can just barely get my hand up through there. So I should be able to reach through there and hold a bucking bar on those. Let's see, that would help me with the two of the middle ribs. The outboard rib is obviously pretty easy. And then the inboard ribs, where you see, it's kind of easy to see where I'm at right now. If you can see where that tie down attach bracket is there by my left hand, that is kind of where the first rib will go. And those ribs have, the leading edge ribs have big lightning holes, so you can reach your hand all the way through. So I can probably reach through and get the first 3 ribs there. But there's a good chance that I might need a partner. I'm not completely confident that I will be able to do all of this riveting myself, meaning the rib flange to the spar web. We'll see. I don't know. But I won't get too crazy with the experimentation. So that's what's coming up. And then you can use a squeezer to do the skin to spar flange. That's the easy part. So that's what's coming up. This is, or has been, episode 97, Wings 26. Don't forget there were 30 fuel tank ones in between. So thanks for being here.